this month, Barry was occupied, so we asked some of us to come up with a plan for this month. And someone came up with an idea of talking about pilgrimage. And I find that very serendipitous because today's gospel, or actually the first reading on Leviticus, is on the Jubilee year, which promotes pilgrimage. And this year has been a Jubilee year, and a lot of us have gone on pilgrimage. And so we do want to hear from some of you and some of your places you've been. I know, a lot of you have gone to Italy and Rome. And anyway, we had 3 speakers lined up for you. One of them, Gerard Buckmelter, couldn't make it, but I have a few slides from him that I'll share with you. I'm going to be the next speaker, but I'd like to introduce to you Sergio Vargas, who you all know. He's been a person here a long time, and he's going to tell us about his recent trip on the Camino.
Yep. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And I'm going to be focusing on this pilgrimage because he's going to be doing the other ones. So anyways, before we just go straight into the El Camino, we want to talk about what the pilgrimage is. And I think we got a little hint of that from the homily today from Father, right? When he says the pilgrimage can be somewhat of a reset. And I'm not going to read this because I think you all know how to read. And it is that journey to a holy site. And as I was talking to some of the people out here, sometimes the journey can just be a nice walk to the church, right? What can be more holy than the sanctuary, right? So anyways, that is the pilgrimage. So now if we go directly to the introduction to El Camino, again, you can read, and so I won't be reading all this here. But again, this is a pilgrimage that's been happening for, what they say here, over 1,000 years, because at the final destination, they called it the end of the world, which, of course, Europe is not the end of the world. And I see some familiar faces. If I believe I've talked to you about this before I went on the pilgrimage. So I know some of you have done it, same with Francisco. And it is a wonderful journey, and I can't recommend it enough. So, what happened? Oh, Path to Santiago. No, it's the very bottom there. So anyways, yeah, it'll come. The bottom part just says Paths to Compostela. So there was a group of us from church that said, you know what, we need to go on a pilgrimage. And we said, it's a great idea. Let's go on the pilgrimage. How difficult can it be? We just get on the road and off we go, right? Before we talked to anybody and knew exactly what this was all about. All right, so we started looking into what does it mean to be on the Camino. Well, there are 7 main routes. These are just the main ones. There's a ton more. And not only that, but you can start and stop at different places, because I was asked, well, is this appropriate for different ages, for different groups, for different abilities? And the answer is yes to all those. It all depends what you want to do. So the group of 10 of us, we had some difficulties as deciding what we want to do, and so we ended up fragmenting. Because one person says, you know what, I'm going to do the French way, and I'm going to do it from the very beginning. So up there where it says spot number 1, so she said, I'm going to hike 540 miles. And we said, no, I don't think we're going to do that, because it's going to take her 30 days to complete that voyage. And we said, yeah, we don't have that time from work. We got to go back to work. So then we had the other group of us said, let's do something shorter. And they wanted to start out at Porto, which is on the Portuguese trail, which is the number 3 on the bottom coming up. And even on Porto, it's really right about in there, like halfway through the trip. So now we fragmented again because some other of us said, no, we can't spend 2 weeks on the trail either. And they said they were going to do even longer because they wanted to go and visit Fatima and make it a longer trip. So we can't do that either. So we fragmented again. And the other half of us says, you know what? Vigo sounds good. Vigo is a 5-day trip, so that would be a week. But it actually worked out because a few of us then, we went to Madrid for a couple of days before that, and then we flew into Vigo, and the Vigo is right about in here. Now, they have this down to a science. If you go online, there's a ton of apps that will help you plan your entire trip. You just put in the spot and where you want to start, and it'll tell you how long it'll take to get there, the miles in between each stops, and it'll tell you all the different places you can get boarding at. So we took the easier way because the lady that went from France, she only planned 2 nights of hotels. The first night that she got there on a Sunday evening, and then Monday night, the first day. After that, she was just going to walk until her feet got tired or something happened, and then she was going to look for a place called an albergue, which is just a hostel. And it's exactly that. You'll have big rooms just lined with bunk beds, and you get a room, you get a bed until it's full. So if you get there late, they may just say, sorry, we're full, you got to keep walking. We didn't do that. So on Vigo, we called and made reservations at each one of these points. So we just walked there, and it was great because these hotels, they're on the Camino. You're walking on the Camino, there's your hotel, you walk right into the hotel. In the morning you wake up, you step outside, you're right on the Camino. So it's really simple, really well done. All right, so we finally got that set up, and we all did meet eventually at Vigo, except for the one that went from France. I always said that, we should forget that. All right, so then what happened next? Are there signs? Are we going to get lost? Because none of us had ever done it before. So in talking, people said, don't worry about it. There are going to be signs, and they're very obvious. So on our first night, oh no, there we go, I hit the wrong one. So on the first night, we woke up early in the morning. Well, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and you're in the city, or actually they're really small towns or villages, and there's signs. It's very well marked, right? And then you're going to be walking. When you're out in the forest, if you will, they still have signs up here. But if you're talking and if you're looking down, it is easy to miss. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, actually, I should say, and I only put in this picture because here's this picture of a fish head. And when you go through brochures and everything online, they tell you, oh, when you're walking along the Camino, you'll see all these great kinds of stuff. Well, they don't always look the same in real life. Because when we first got there, we said, oh, great, people are out here graffiti all over the stones. But if you take a step back, we go, oh, wait a minute, this is the fish. There's the eye, and there's the eye. But unfortunately, this is really nice and clean. Here, it's not so clean. You got vegetation starting to grow out. There's dirt all over it. But it is the place, and we know we're going the right way. However, when you even go farther out in the wilderness, you're not always going to see those kinds of signs. You're going to see some kind of arrow on the ground, on a rock face, or something. So it gets a little easier to get lost. And in fact, our friend that took the trip from France, she got lost, and she ended up losing like 3 or 4 hours because she had to come back to try to find it and keep going. Our friends that went to Porto, they also got lost, but they got lost in about an hour. We didn't because the closer you get to your destination, there are a ton of signs, and most of the signs that you'll see will be these kinds of stone pillars telling you exactly where to go. And even then, though, as you can see, here we are, and there's 2 different arrows pointing this way, simply because it will break off, and you can see different kinds of sites, and then they join back up again. And then here, well, you can't read it because it's too far, but here it'll say Santa Maria, and this is Santa Crojo, I think it was, and you can decide which way you want to go. Typically, written in these little blocks will be a number, and that tells you how far away from you are to the final destination. So again, very easy to go, very easy to find. What's that? We took the shorter one, yeah. Because again, when you're way out there, there's going to be a lot less people traveling. The closer you get to your destinations, there's a lot of people, and you can see all these lines of people just going. And we went in September, which is on the short end. So anyways, were there challenges? Even though we did all the planning, the answer is yes. There's plenty of challenges that you don't really expect. So right in the middle here, that is Hurricane Kirk. And the Camino is right up in here is where we all end up going. So did it hit there? Yes. Yes, it did hit there. But we could plan a little bit. So this is the first day. We got a little bit of rain, not a big deal. We've got our ponchos on, and everything is fine, and it's kind of, no big deal, right? Second day, we wake up to the news, and the government is saying, don't walk the Camino. The hurricane is hitting. It's going to start some flooding. We recommend that you take the bus or you take a taxi. So we sat and we thought about it, and we thought about it. 4 of the people in our group says, we're taking the bus. The rest of us said, you know what, we came this far, we are gonna walk it. So we started to walk it. And as you can see, here we are. This is the trail, all this water right here. So we're trying to get out as best we can. But it is hurricanes. It's not the hurricanes you would get down in the Caribbean and stuff, but it's blowing. Our ponchos are all over the place. So we are soaked, and it doesn't take long at all. And of course, next thing you know, there are barricades and the police. It's closed, it's flooded, you can't go this way. So then we start walking through the towns. And Google was nice, because now you can use Google because you can go through the streets in town. But we come to the spot, and there's down power lines. And we go, okay, we don't want to do that. But there are other groups. So this is our group right here, and there are other groups behind us and other groups in front of us. Fortunately, people know people there. And somebody was on the phone, and they said, hey, the best thing you can do, and it's recommended, is that you get off the roads, the street roads. Obviously, you can't go through the Camino because they're all flooded, but you need to go on the freeway. So we had to get on the freeway. Fortunately, there's no cars here, but there's traffic going back and forth. There's debris. But again, Google made it pretty easy because we can just follow it. And our next point was Ponte Verde. So we walked it, and we get off on the off-ramp. And we made it. But we made it super late. I think we didn't get in until like 6 or 7 o'clock at night. But it was very memorable, and it was great. And we're glad we did it. And the people that we met up with, they said they probably wish they would have done it as well. The next day, which is the one in the top corner there, we don't obviously need our ponchos, but everything is still flooded, so we still got to make our ways through what was there. I'm going through quickly because I want to. Okay, so one thing that we decided that we really need to do is to relish the journey. And I should use a better font last time. It says relish the journey, because after we were done with the first day of being all excited about it, the second day of the hurricane, the third day dealing with the floods, we're almost done with our part of the Camino, and we really should relish where we are. And I don't know if you can see it, but I mean, you get beautiful rainbows. You're going through old antiquity here where you have these nice paths, little villages, gorgeous churches that we went to every day and stopped off at. It was beautiful if you just sit and relax and enjoy the journey. So, again, can't see it, but it says finally closing in on our goal. Our goal was, of course, getting it to Santiago. And so the first slide, there's my lovely wife, and you get into the city, and you go, man, now we got to somehow get through the city. But way up in the top there is Santiago. So we were ecstatic when we saw that. We go, finally our goal, and we were so happy to get there. And my wife and I, we were the first ones there. More fragmentations, and we can talk about that later if you need. But we all do meet up. We're all here. Here's Santiago. Here is inside the church. Beautiful church. Very nice. Everyone there is praying. You do have some people taking pictures and so forth and so on, which is what you're going to expect. And then, of course, you got to deal with the lines. All this is people lined up and coming back towards us as well to go and see the crypt for St. James. But again, things go by really quick. They've been doing this for a very long time. It was a great experience. So, all right, the next day, because there's always a next day. Our journey doesn't necessarily end because we made it to that destination. So we went So this is just another one of the entrances into the city, and you'll see things like that. But once you get inside, you don't get too many of these anymore. Now you need to find the church and go to the spires. They also have a beautiful park up at the top where you can go and you can see down into the church there, the cathedral itself. Now, we do need to go to these two spots, and I forgot to point it out on one of the other slides. But here's those pillars. But if you can read right in here, it says 0.0. That means you've made it, because in all these other pillars that you'll see, as I mentioned, there are numbers, and that numbers is kilometers to get to the site that you're trying to go to. And they have two spots that are 0.0. This place called Fisterra and this part called Mukia. These are supposed to be two places where St. James went. And also these are the places where some of the pilgrimages were sent from throughout Europe, because what they had to do is for their penance, they had to make this pilgrimage. And as you can always see, they always have these shells, and the shells were iconic because the priest, and this is how the story goes, the priest would say, to prove that you made it to the end of the world, you need to bring back a shell to make sure that you made it all the way there, and that's why you see those. So anyways, that was beautiful. All right, so it was a pilgrimage. What did we learn? What did we do? So plan, commit, and adjust, just like we have to do with almost everything that we do throughout our lives, right? And as I said, it's so many things to do in terms of planning, but it's made very easy. Also, the 10 of us started off on the same journey, but we had different paths. And we ended up being separated because there are some people that just wanted to go as quickly as they could, and they took off. They were the rabbits, if you will. They ended up being our scouts. They would take off ahead of us, and we had our phones, and they would come back and they would say, hey, this part is flooded. Hey, we've got something going on here. Or hey, we stopped up in such a place for lunch. Why don't you guys come and meet us? So that worked out well. We have others that were slower because she wanted to take pictures of everything. But it was well documented, and it was, again, really nice. So, and that comes to the next one, right? Use everybody's gifts. We all do different things, even though we're on the same journey, same path. We have the different gifts. Go ahead and use them. Celebrate, of course, every day, because before you know it, you're halfway through your journey, and you've missed a lot of things that you should have taken the time to enjoy. Travel light and simple. In fact, we were talking about it earlier. I can't remember who it was that mentioned that, just back there in the chairs or the tables. Now, I have to give you full disclosure. During the hike, I had one backpack for my wife and I, water, snacks, first aid kit, and that was it, because we hired a company to take our luggage from hotel to hotel. And it worked out great, because in 3 of those places, you get to your room and your luggage is in the room. So worth every euro. It was great. Whereas keep going, right? You're going to get challenges. Things are going to happen. A couple of people got blisters, the ones from the farther distances. We didn't get any, so that was nice. So be prepared for that and keep going. And people are nice. That's the one thing that we wish we would have done more of, is when you get to these places to stop for lunch and everything, people are more than willing to talk to you and say hi and to find out where you're from and what you're doing. And if you do that, now you're really taking in what we really want, and that is to talk to the other people, find out what their journey is and what they're doing. So that was it, actually. That was the quick almost 15-minute journey to go through that. I will be back there if you have any questions. I'd be more than happy to talk to you, but there are other people that probably have done the longer and better trips, and they can tell you more. So thank you very much. Oh, I guess we have a question.
All right, great. Can you hear me okay? All right, how many of you have been on the Camino? I have not, actually. All right, I have been on its baby brother, though, which is the Camino de San Antonio. Yes, San Antonio, Texas, has a Camino, and it's actually officially a part of the Camino de Santiago. And it's funny, is they have those mile markers, too, but it's on the sidewalk. And you go you visit 4 missions and the cathedral along beautiful flowers and trees and along the river there. So if you don't want to go all the way to Spain, you can go to San Antonio and have a similar experience. It's less likely to rain, too. There's different ways of taking a pilgrimage, and one way is to go on your own, plan it all your own, and it takes a lot of work. I think the biggest tip I got from him was hiring this company for the luggage. That's a good one to keep. And let's see if I can open this up. There we go. So I've been to many pilgrimages. I have not been on one of these planned ones where you hire a company that's got a planned pilgrimage. There's many great ones out there, but you're with a group. You go with the herd. You get on a bus, and I'm not knocking them at all. It's not my personal style. I like to have some freedom to go where I want to go, but it does take a lot of planning and a lot of work to do that. But I think that's part of the process of preparing for a pilgrimage. For me, it is. Researching ahead of time. Where do I want to go? What's the significance of this? What saints have lived here? And there's the top places, the Holy Land. I've been there. I want to show you some slides on that. Rome, I've been there too. I don't have those slides. But I'm going to share with you some of the ones where are less popular, than, Lourdes and Fatima are up there. Our Lady Guadalupe in Mexico City are way up there. They're great places, and they're on my bucket list. But Holy Land is the only one of those prominent, most popular pilgrimages that I've been on. But that was my favorite, actually, to tell you the truth. So let me start this slideshow here. All right. So, and also you can go on your own, solo. You can go with just your spouse, your significant other. You can go with friends. There's different ways to do it. You can go with a priest. That's particularly grace-filled. And I've done all those ways to different places. This is just an example of one of the places. I don't have a lot of slides on it, but this is. Do you guys want to recognize this place? It's Mont Saint-Michel in the northern France. Yes. And it's amazing because it is a tidal island. At low tide, it looks like this. At high tide, it's an island. It's surrounded by water. So you have to wait till, well, no, there's a bridge if it's high tide so you can get there. But it's very ancient and amazing to go up in there and go all the way to the top. These are the women in my life, my mom, Judy, my wife, Sandy, and my daughter, Jessica. So again, when you're on pilgrimage, it's largely a mindset. Like Sergio was saying, life is a pilgrimage. Everywhere you go can be like a pilgrimage. It's basically traveling with a purpose, and the purpose is getting closer to our Lord. And it's good to pray while you're doing it and share and look for opportunities. I'm constantly amazed is the way God works in these travels in sudden, amazing ways, coincidences, and things you never expect. So our motto here, the Kingdom Men, seek first the kingdom wherever you go. So part of Mont Saint-Michel is actually part of what's really interesting. I just recently learned about this, is the Sword of Michael, or the ley line of monasteries of St. Michael. All of these are incredible monasteries dedicated to St. Michael, and they all lie on one line, on a flat map. I know, this is Mont Saint-Michel here. So, and this one also is a tidal island right here outside of England, and this is in Ireland. I've been here too, Stella Maris, that's at the tip of the sword. So you can imagine this is Michael's sword. He's ready to do battle against evil. And my next trip I go to Italy and either see this one or this one. So, as you know, there are three themes that our men's group has. So to tie this with this group here, we want an adventure to live, and a pilgrimage checks that box. It's very much an adventure and can be very exciting. It's a battle to fight. What happened? Sorry. A battle to fighting evil. And going on a pilgrimage and being prayerful, that's battling evil. It's building our spiritual aptitude. A beauty to cherish. So not only our wives, our spouses, but also the beauty of the places that we're going. Some of the beauty that Sergio showed, the beauty of the monasteries. You want to really appreciate that, appreciate the goodness of the Lord. So going on pilgrimage checks all the boxes for the men's group here. And I would suggest, hey, try to resolve to do at least one a year or a retreat once a year. And invite a friend and have fellowship share it with others in different ways. Okay. So originally 3 of us were going to give talks. The original original was for, they knew that I and Gerard and Sergio had recently gone on some pilgrimages, and someone was interested in hearing about that. Gerard, unfortunately, wasn't able to give the talk because he's in Washington State. A good friend of him is Tom Kelly, who I guess is a former parishioner from here. Anyone know Tom or remember Tom? Sergio? Okay. Anyway, we want to dedicate this talk and this day in his memory and for the salvation of his soul. And we're thinking of Gerard being up there at the funeral. But Gerard gave me some slides. He went to Poland in early June, and it was a group pilgrimage, so it was one of those package deals. He went with a bunch of people on buses and everything, but he went to all these different places. And of course, Poland is famous for 3 major saints that we are close to in our parish here, right? John Paul II, Faustina, and Maximilian Kolbe. So Gerard were comparing notes, and on the same day that he was in Terezin, Poland, which is a monastery, I'll show you a picture that Maximilian Kolbe built. I was in Nagasaki at Maximilian Kolbe. They started in Nagasaki. So that's one of those coincidence things. Wow. Of course, Maximilian Kolbe is known for offering his life in exchange for another prisoner at Auschwitz. And this is a photo that Gerard sent where he was there. And he's also at the prison. You can go to block 11 and see the prison cell where he was. And then here it says, the cell in which 1941 died prisoners sentenced to death by starvation as a result of collective responsibility for escapes. One of them was Father Maximilian Kolbe, the Polish priest who sacrificed his life to save another prisoner. So that's quite an inspiration for all of us. And then finally, he was one of the last ones to survive after weeks of starvation. He was still alive, so they injected him with a lethal injection. This is the monastery I mentioned that he dedicated in the late 1920s, and it was just after he did that, he went to Nagasaki, Japan in 1930 and was there for 6 years. And then when he came back, he became the superior for this monastery. So these are some of the views inside the church, outside the church, and some of the side chapels there. I didn't know he had that monastery, so that was interesting. So now to my experience. So I like maps a lot, and it's part of the planning, and it helps me to remember things and put things in perspective. So recently, in June, my wife and I went on a cruise to Japan. So an opportunity came up, we grabbed it, and it was a one-way trip from Seoul, South Korea, to many cities in Japan, all the way up to Tokyo. And I was really excited about going to Nagasaki, especially. It's like the cradle of Catholicism and Christianity in Japan. And I'll show you some slides on that. I was also very much inspired by Wayne and Michelle, who also went to Nagasaki earlier this year, or was it last year? Last year. And did any of you guys go to their talk? They gave a great talk on that experience. And so I didn't spend as much time in Nagasaki. I would have loved to spend more than one day, but this was like, you go on the ship, and then you go and then you spend a day at your destination. Go on the ship, spend your day on the destination. So we like to cruise, and we've done several of them, and I thought was a good way to get a big introduction to Japan. And so what's interesting, you probably read it already, is that South Korea has a large Christian population and Catholic heritage, and so we did some pilgrimage walks in Seoul. But Japan is only like 0.34% Catholic. but there's churches everywhere. So we found Catholicism everywhere and a lot of history as well. So what's interesting too is remember in 1549, St. Francis Xavier, one of the original Jesuits, went to Kochi here and began evangelizing Japan. And then after that, there was a lot of persecution of the Christians, the Catholics. These are depicted in many movies, like Silence, for example. And a lot of the Christians had to hide their faith for many years, up for like 200 years, from 1600 to 200 years later. So this is a very significant site. This is the site of the 26 martyrs of Japan. We have a feast day, Paul Miki and the 26 martyrs. This is the site on Nishizaka Hill, and there's a memorial here, and this is the mound, the hill where they were all crucified on crosses after walking many, many hours and many days suffering at the hands of the people that were taking them. What's really interesting, what I learned, this church is called St. Philip of Jesus, and it's really ornate and everything. And what's interesting is this was the very first Mexican martyr. Francisco, did you know who the first Mexican martyr was? Yeah, first Mexican martyr, and it was in Nagasaki. And also, for you, the Filipinos, did you know St. Lorenzo Ruiz, who's we have in a stained glass window, he was the first Filipino martyr, and he was martyred in Nagasaki years later, in the ways that are depicted in this movie, Silence. So I thought that was interesting. So also Nagasaki, this is the place of St. Maximilian Kolbe's monastery, which was on the side, not in the downtown, but off to the east in a valley, which he had some kind of insight not to put this monastery in the middle of town. Like, he didn't know that everything was going to be destroyed in 1945 by an atomic bomb. I don't know, but he put it behind a mountain range where it was protected, so it survived the atomic bomb. And what was cool is Sandy and I were probably the only ones there. We went on a special trip to go to this place. It wasn't where I thought it was. It was actually on the other side of the valley from where I thought it was in my mind. And absolutely nobody there. But we went into the church, beautiful church, said some prayers. There's a museum there. Did I take a picture of that? No, I didn't get it. His office is there. Get to sit in his chair. What was most significant was at the top of the hill there's a grotto dedicated to Our Lady of Lourdes. And he called this the Lourdes of the East. And I know this is a pilgrimage for many, even Japanese people that go here to pray for something special. The waters have healing powers. And Sandy and I were up there. It was a kind of a drizzly day, and it was just gorgeous, green, plush. And I mean, the photo doesn't do it justice, but we just really had a very special spiritual moment together there. Just very powerfully felt Mary's presence and the Holy Spirit, and tears and everything. So that was a special moment and just a gift that God gave us that we didn't expect. The only ones there in this very special place that I'm sure no one else on our cruise ship went there. But we did also go to the other places like Peace Park. This is the hydro center, hypercenter of the bomb. So the bomb didn't hit the ground. It blew 500 feet up in the air above this spot right here. They have this memorial here. Hiroshima doesn't have a nice monument like this. Hiroshima has like a little plaque in front of a building that's really hard to see, and you walk by and pass it without even realize what it was. And then they have beautiful churches there. We went to a couple of them there, and I wanted to point out here the Japanese. These are some kids that wanted to practice their English on us, so that was really, really fun talking with them, these little Catholic kids. And of course, there was a lot of sites dedicated in memory of Dr. Takashi Nagai. Many of you have heard of him. who was a radiologist, a Japanese radiologist. He converted at an early age, and was in the Nagasaki when the bomb hit, and he led a very inspiring life. Okay, so another place that hardly anyone, who's been to Lebanon? I had an opportunity to go to Lebanon. There's a wedding. My brother's getting married, and it's like, wow, what an opportunity to learn more about this country. It's known for being on the northern border of Israel, and Israel launching bombs at each other on that northern border, but the southern border of Lebanon here. Okay, but what we should realize is that, well, first of all, Lebanon is 30 to 40% Christian. It's not all Muslim. It's a very big and very devoted Christian population there, but they're mostly Maronite, which is Catholic, or Greek Orthodox, not Catholic, but we share the Blessed Sacrament of the Eucharist, and then Greek Catholic as well. So Lebanon is the site of ancient Phoenicia, which is mentioned all over in the Bible. For example, Tyre and Sidon. When you hear Jesus went to Tyre and Sidon, those are in southern Lebanon. They're still there. And ancient Phoenicia was Hellenized by the Greeks at the time of Jesus. And also remember, it's mentioned in Matthew chapter 15, the Canaanite woman who said that even the dogs eat the crumbs of those who, I remember that quote. That was a woman in this area. And then I stayed in Patron, and that is somewhere between Byblos and Tripolis, right in this area. Beautiful area. The coastline is absolutely beautiful, maybe the most beautiful in the world, with cliffs, and then in just inland along here is a mountain range, which Lebanon is famous for its cedar trees, and cedars are Lebanon cedar is mentioned all throughout the Gospel and the Old Testament.
Did you go there?
We did. Yeah, I got a photo of that. Huh? I didn't notice any storks. So that's where babies come from. That's interesting. Yeah, they're fantastic trees. I'll show you a picture of that. But before that, one unique thing in Patron is they have a 5th century BC wall, Phoenician wall. This was cut out of the original limestone. This is all limestone, like a cliff, and they just cut it all out, leaving a wall there to protect that city. And I was admiring it on my jet ski out here in the water. And it was such a glorious day. So this is called the Cedars of God forest here. It's up in the mountains here. These are the cedar trees. It's actually only like 25 acres. You can walk through it, and it's very well kept, like you're going to Sequoia. It's like a national park. But it's quite a drive. But the drive it's like a 2-hour drive or something. But the drive is there. You're going through these immense caverns and canyons with beautiful cliffs, and then there's monasteries on the way. Monasteries dedicated to Saint Charbel. We recently celebrated his feast day, and I don't know if you knew. There's another little thing I learned. Saint Charbel is known for having the most recorded miracles, 33,000 or something like that. It's like more than all of them combined. So you already knew that. Wow, impressive. And only counting the ones recorded, exactly. Wow. So there's just a lot of miracles going on all the time. So maybe we should pray to Saint Charbel, learn a little bit more about him. There must be something to it. And this is inside of one of those monasteries, just absolutely beautiful and ancient architecture. And see, this is an example of the cliffs and the valleys, and just fantastic views. And it's very unique. So I wanted to share that with you guys. That was in July 2022. And then the other unique place I went to, you can't go there right now. It's closed ever since COVID, is Molokai, is Kalaupapa, the peninsula on the island of Molokai. You can go to Molokai, you just can't go here. this little peninsula here, was the leper colony in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Otherwise known as Hansen's disease. Now, there's a cure for leprosy now, but back then there wasn't. So, in a panic, they quarantined all the people that had any sign of leprosy and put them on this peninsula here. And this, of course, is the story of Saint Damien. So, I was able to go here. We flew from the top island down to the airport down here. And the priest guided us throughout this whole place, and it was really special. We were able to say Mass here at St. Philomena, which St. Damien built. This has that classic view of these little islands over here, and it's forested right now, and there's also a little like a volcano right in the middle of it that was the cause of which formed this peninsula. But it's absolutely beautiful. Kalaupapa is known for having the world's largest sea cliffs. They're like 3,600 to 3,900 feet above the sea. This is a view of the peninsula from the south, from here. See this lookout here? So if you we went to this lookout and you look down here, this is cliffs right here, and you look down, this is what it looks like, looking down from above. And so St. Damien is buried there. His cemetery is there right next to the church here, this beautiful church. And this is the altar inside of it over here. And this is on the upper island. He's built several churches in the upper part of the island too. And I thought this is one of the churches, Church of the Seven Sorrows. And there's a cross here. And look at this double rainbow here. Rainbows aren't that rare in Hawaii, but this was an incredible shot I wanted to share with you guys. All right, so my favorite trip, hope it isn't getting too long, was to the Holy Land. That was in April 2017. And so what we did is 3 of us, men, we planned this trip, and we rented a car, and we just drove all the way around. We drove, fly into Tel Aviv, right? I'm not sure I would recommend going now. But hopefully things will clear up, and someday, I want to go back and see a lot more. I saw a ton, but I'd like to see even more now. And we drove up the coast. This coast is reminding me of San Diego coastline. It's very similar. We went up to, this is Haifa. This is where Mount Carmel is. This is the mountain range of Mount Carmel. So we did make a stop at Caesarea. Now there's 2 Caesareas, right? There's Caesarea Maritime, which is on the coast, and then Caesarea Philippi, which is more to the north. All these towns named after Caesar. This Caesarea Maritime was built by Herod in about 20 BC, and it was the capital of the Roman-ruled Judea. And it was a major port city, and it's featured a lot in Acts of the Apostles. The conversion of Cornelius, the centurion, by Peter, the first Gentile recorded to convert. Paul was imprisoned there for 2 years. Philip, one of the 7 deacons, lived there and preached there. And then Herod Agrippa's death is explained in there. And it's also the site of the Pilate Stone. Do you know what the Pilate Stone is? Pilate Stone is an actual stone. It's basically proof that Pontius Pilate existed as the procurator of Judea. And that's a stone that was found on site in Caesarea Maritime. So, going on this trip, there's a lot of archaeological information, and you could look at it. It's available and incredible. It's a lot to absorb. This is Mount Carmel right here, which of course it means a lot to us. This is from the Mediterranean looking west. So this is the Stella Maris Monastery up here. There's actually a cable car that takes you up and down. But you can also walk it. It's a beautiful walk. But the Mount Carmel mountain range is very long, and you have to drive it to really experience the whole thing, especially get to the site where tradition says Elijah had that duel with the Baal priests. So we went to that site as well. So we our route was, and I would recommend you do this route too. I'm going to do it again, I think. start in Tel Aviv, go up here, stop at Caesarea Maritime, go to Mount Carmel, and then look over here. There's Nazareth. You go right over to Nazareth, and right here is Mount Tabor, the site of the Transfiguration. And then from there, you can go to the Sea of Galilee, where there's a ton of things to see. And then we spent several days here, and then we drove all the way down the Jordan River Valley to Jericho. And I've got some slides of Jericho here. Jericho is, one of the most ancient cities in the world, and it's the site of, of the Old Testament. We did a father-son excursion where we did the crossing of the Jericho River and the downing of Jericho, the walls of Jericho. And then we went to Jerusalem, and we spent several days in Jerusalem. I don't have enough time to talk about everything we did there. We took a day trip to Bethlehem, and then back to Jerusalem, and then back to Tel Aviv. So that circle is I think works really well. The Dead Sea too. There's a couple of spots on the Dead Sea. Qumran, it would be great to see. Masada, but I wasn't able to do it all. It was about 2 weeks. 2 weeks total. So this is Mount Tabor. This is the Church of the Transfiguration, beautiful church up on this is actually looking at Mount Tabor from afar. It's magnificent because it just sits all by itself, just like a volcano. And we drove up to the top of it. I was really worried because on the way up, the roads they're dirt roads and they're rocky. And then we're in this car, and all of a sudden I heard this pop. It was like really sounds. Oh no, we probably got a flat or something like that, and because it was really hairy, it was windy, but we didn't, and we made it with a lot of prayers. But that's part of the adventure, right? And inside they have a chapel of Moses and chapel of Elijah, and we were able to blessed with having mass said there. And then Nazareth was incredible. This is what the city kind of looks like. And, we just read this in the gospel just recently, right? Where Jesus goes to his hometown. He reads from Isaiah. And then they didn't say it in the gospel reading, but if you read it, they went and they rose up and drove him out of the town, brought him to the brow of the hill on which their town was built so they could throw him down the cliff. Well, guess what? There's a cliff there, right at Nazareth, built on a cliff. And there it is. This is the Jezreel Valley down here. So I could easily it was really cool to be able to picture Jesus being driven to the edge here and possibly them throwing him down this cliff. Good question. It was a ways. It would have been quite a long walk, like an hour or something. So it wasn't just like right there. I mean, I don't know where the original site of the synagogue was, though, so that wasn't clear. But it was a long ways from the Church of the Annunciation, which is what most people go to see. This is the Grotto of the Holy Family inside the Church of the Annunciation. This is likely where their Holy Family had their house. And it's a grotto because in the first century, a lot of people would build their wooden house, against a cave. And so in the cave would be cool. You can put the animals in there. I think also in Bethlehem, where Jesus was born, it was probably a similar construction. There's a cave there, where they would have had a manger, for example. But here, this is the where they lived. And also, you guys know about the Holy House of Loreto? So there's an imprint of the remains of a house, the wooden part, in front of the grotto, somewhere up here. It wasn't clear. There was a lot of people, a lot of lines, and it wasn't clear exactly where. But somehow that house was levitated and went to Italy. And then actually went to Turkey, and then one spot in Italy, and then another spot, and then finally now it's ended up in Loreto. You can go and see it. And it's dated to the 1st century, and it has the same dimensions as the house that was here, that's not there now. So that's pretty incredible. And then there's another story that says, the gospel doesn't say exactly where Mary was when the angel Gabriel came to her and announced. But in the Gospel of James, they mention, which, you can take it or leave it, they mention Mary was going out to fetch water. And so there's a place in Nazareth called Mary's Well, and this is it, which possibly was the site of the Annunciation. Then on the Sea of Galilee, there's many, many important sites, but Capernaum is incredible because there's just a vast array of first century ruins. And, just the bottom part of all these houses, it was definitely a town from the first century. And then one of them is Peter's house, and they built a church on top of it right here. So this was Jesus' headquarters, right? Over here is the synagogue. This is built later, but it's on top of the original synagogue where Jesus preached and performed many miracles as depicted in the Gospels. And there's over 7 references in the Synoptic Gospels about this, and it's right on the Sea of Galilee. They were fishermen, right? So it makes sense, right on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee. And then Jericho, look, there's a guy with sheep. It's real deal. There's shepherds there. And Jericho is really close to the River Jordan and the traditional spot where Jesus was baptized by John. And that's where a lot of people flock to this area, and they can be baptized there. And we went there, and it was pretty cool. But the Jordan River is not that impressive. It's not that big. It's not a lot of water that rushes through. It's kind of dirty and brown, but it's the Jordan River. It starts above the Sea of Galilee, right, and from the mountains, and then flows into the Sea of Galilee, and then goes down all the way down the Jordan Valley to the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea, of course, is famous because it's the lowest spot on the earth. And it's called the Dead Sea because it's very, very salty. Nothing can live there. And a lot of people like to go there. If you go there on an excursion, you'll probably go there and float on the salt water because it's very buoyant. The Salton Sea. No, not the Salton Sea. The Dead Sea, which is really close to Jericho. Yeah. This was a really interesting, this is a monastery of the Temptation. It's a Greek Orthodox monastery built in the cliffs, and it's actually the traditional site where Jesus was tempted by the devil. It's got some incredible views, and boy, it was really hard to get up there. You see this really steep cliffs. We took a cable car. And then the most important and the most incredible, as incredible as that was. Now, what's cool about the Sea of Galilee is that it looks probably just like it did in Jesus' time. You can look around, and the mountains, it's not very well developed. There's towns around, Tiberias being the biggest one. But really, you look at there, and you can imagine Jesus walking right there and seeing the same thing that he saw.
Do you have a picture from the monastery?
I do. I have a lot of pictures. I'll share. I'm happy to share them, but there's so many. It was hard to bring it down to a few. Well, on my trip to Japan and Korea, that we took 2,000 pictures. Yeah. So Jerusalem, I just want to. This is the layout. I think everyone should kind of study the layout of Jerusalem because it really brings the Gospels alive. And having been there, just cemented in my mind, I can picture Jesus carrying the cross or, praying in Gethsemane. So this is, Jerusalem originated here. It's called the City of David here. This is I put in terrain mode from Google Maps. This is a ridge, and it's more dramatically high than it seems right here. But this is the original Jerusalem. The City of David was here. So up here, the old city, this is what we think of as Jerusalem. Jerusalem, the city, is really big. Okay, it's big, much bigger. You got your Jewish side over here. You've got their Muslim side over here. And then in the old city, it has 4 quarters: a Muslim quarter, a Christian quarter, Jewish quarter, Armenian quarter. And the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, of course, is where we as Catholics, really revere. This is in the Christian quarter, and I'll talk about that in a second. But The original Jerusalem was here in the city of David, and there's a recent archaeological and evidence that of things that happened in the Old Testament. One of the coolest things here is Hezekiah's tunnel. Hezekiah's tunnel is about this wide and about this tall, and it goes from the Gihon Spring to the Pool of Siloam, which was recently discovered down here, and you can walk through it. You go through there, and it's pitch black and very quiet. It's unbelievable that I can actually do it. And this was King Hezekiah cut this. It's as depicted in the Bible to be able to have the water go from the Gihon Spring to the Pool of Siloam, so the invaders couldn't have access to water. So there was only later Solomon built the temple up on the Temple Mount area, which is right here. And then this is this valley here is right where the Gethsemane is. This was a very special place. We know that that's where Jesus was, had his agony in the garden. This is the Mount of Olives, so it's at the foot of the Mount of Olives. From here, you can see the Temple Mount and the Mount of Olives. So it's an incredible sight. And you can go to the top of the Mountain of Olives. There's the traditional site of his ascension. We stayed in this panorama hotel, and it really had a panoramic view. It was run by some Muslims, and it was a perfect place, a great view, if you don't mind cockroaches. Food was good, though. None of us got sick. And then the Via Dolorosa is along here. It starts here, it goes along here, all the way to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is amazing. And and the upper room is over here. I'd love to tell you more about all this, but it's getting kind of late right now. So, quarter, half a mile. Yeah, it's very walkable. There's 14 stations, right? The original 14 stations are there. So the question was, what's the distance from the start of the Via Dolorosa to the end, which is at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre? It's like a quarter a mile or a half a mile, somewhere in there. Very walkable. It's walking through the streets of the old city. There's vendors all over. You can stop and have a coffee. But there's all these little markers, 1 through 14, that represent the 14 stations. Yes? There are some inclines. I didn't find it terribly much of an incline in the old city. Oh. I didn't notice that. Yeah, I could talk for a long time about each one of these things. There's so many interesting coincidences that happened. So what was interesting, Father was talking about the Jubilee. So I had this slide here. It's like, this is a Jubilee year, and I saw this all over the place for this year. Pilgrims of Hope in a lot of the churches. And what's interesting, though, is that the next Jubilee will be in 2033, marking the 2000th anniversary of Jesus' Passion, Death, and Resurrection. So that'll be a special Jubilee. So tips, seek these Catholic sites near your destination, wherever you go. You'll find some Catholic connection there. It made me feel at home when I would go visit a church, even in Japan, where there aren't as many Catholics. Research the Catholic history, the biblical references, the saints associated with your destinations to really get the full benefit of visiting these places. Map out your plan, but be flexible and spontaneous. Allow for spontaneity, because things will happen through God's providence. And take your time to pray at these sites. Sandy and I would try to do a decade of the Rosary at every church that we visited. Offer intentions for your pilgrimage, and also you could earn an indulgence at a lot of these. So you can look for plenary indulgence opportunities. There you go. Oh, that's the Cedars of God path. What's that? Yeah. And this is being recorded, so you can share it with your friends. And I'm going to share the slides too with Boris. And man, the challenge for me was just narrowing it down. And because I've been to so many places that I'd love to talk and share about, but I know it can get long like a family slideshow. But at this point, I'll have, if you have any questions for me or for Sergio, or you want to share a short story of your own, of your experience with a pilgrimage. Where's that other microphone? Here it is.
Here, if we don't have the budget or the time to go to these destinations overseas, is the String of Pearls missions in California. And I've been blessed to be able to do that.
That's a great comment. We are blessed with the missions of California, and we have Mission de Alcalá here, mission we went up in Oceanside, and
There was a day journey, all 20 something.
All 20, 1 day journey.
No. Each day.
1 day per place.
Yeah. They walked, so it was a day's journey to each of those 21 missions.
Yeah. Start with one. San Juan Capistrano is a great place to go. Thanks for the comment. Any other questions or comments? All right, brothers. Thanks for your time. All right. God bless.